Welcome to Conversation with Syima Aslam, the director of the Bradford Literature Festival. I'm your host, Ian Beasley. Syima Aslam founded the Bradford Literature Festival in 2014, and within 5 years it became one of the most popular and innovative festivals in the country. So, Syima, what was your inspiration for starting a literature festival in Bradford?
My inspiration was really the city itself. I'm an avid reader and I love attending literature festivals, and I'd been to quite a few around the country, which I really enjoyed, but I did feel quite a lot of the time that we needed some different conversations. We also needed people in the room who probably felt that a literature festival wasn't really the place for them, and maybe they wouldn't even have that awareness. I was very conscious of the fact that when I was growing up, I wouldn't have had that awareness. So I wanted to create a festival in Bradford, have some of the conversations that you can probably only have in this city against this backdrop, and ensure that it was a place where we could host the great and the good and the brilliant names in literature, but also ensure that the community of Bradford and the region felt that it was a place for them.
So one of the really good things that you'll be able to tell us is that the Bradford Literature Festival will be taking place this year.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed on this that nothing changes. Yes, we will be having a hybrid model this year. There will be some live events and some digital events. And those will be taking place at the end of June, 25th of June. So we're very close to the final opening up, so which is why I'm very much fingers crossed. But the 25th of June to the 4th of July, there'll be events in the city centre as there normally are, and we will be having digital events running at the same time.
And details will be on your website?
Absolutely, details will be on our website, which is bradfordlitfest.co.uk, and obviously on all our social media, which is with the same handle. We're at Bradford Lit Fest on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
So I know one of the things that you're passionate about is children's literacy. And I read recently a report that literacy in Bradford and West Yorkshire is actually quite poor. So it's one of the things behind the festival to try and encourage more children to read. Absolutely.
That was one of the driving forces behind creating the festival. I have a passionate belief that education has the power to change people's lives, and I firmly believe that literacy is the foundation for every part of the education curriculum. I feel sometimes that focus tends to be lost. People think in blocks of subjects, and they don't actually realise that if you don't have the basic foundation stone of literacy, every part of the curriculum will be closed to you. So when I was probably a few years before the festival, I was doing some different work, and one of the things that I was looking at was the population of Bradford and West Yorkshire, and the areas where that population was growing and how that correlated with attainment rates. And I felt that we needed something that would actually encourage children to read. One of the conversations we had about the literature festival was whether it should be called a literature festival and whether people would find that slightly off-putting and feel it was too highbrow, but I felt it was absolutely the right thing to do because I wanted to create events that were really accessible for everybody, particularly children, but for them to know that they were part of a literature festival, so when they came across those words, it wouldn't be a barrier for them. I felt that was really important.
And of course, the other interesting thing about Bradford is the number of languages that are actually spoken within the city. I did actually read, I think there's 63 plus languages, of which these probably half a dozen core languages. So do you think this has an impact on literacy?
Well, speaking as someone who grew up with two languages and for a while spoke only Urdu and Punjabi, I think having a second or even a third language can be a real asset. I think children who actually speak a number of different languages can learn languages very fast. I think reading is really at the core of all of these things when it comes to literacy. I personally, at the age of 8, I had no English. I'd I went to nursery in the UK and then went to Pakistan for a few years and lost all my English and came back to the UK and had to learn English again. And at the age of 9, I think in my vocabulary test I was at about 34%. And the next year I got 99 in my end of year junior school exams. And it's something I really remember because I'm certainly no Einstein by any stretch of the imagination, but that jump in my vocabulary was purely due to the fact that my mother took me to the library religiously every Saturday, and I was a complete bookworm. So I think it's those things that are actually transformational. I don't think it's actually about the number of languages that may be spoken in a city, or whether you are actually speaking a different language at home. My mother doesn't speak English. My father spoke English barely. He could get by, but I don't feel that had any impact on my literacy, on my love of the English language. So I think it's the circumstances that we create, and the routes that we give children into reading. Libraries are such a massive part of that, and it's something I'm really, really passionate about, because I think if you take away libraries, you take away social mobility. Because when I was growing up, my parents had me shuttled backwards and forwards with the myth of the sort of great return to Pakistan that kept going on in our family. I wasn't surrounded by books. I had a few books that I'd bought at the jumble sale at school, which I still have and treasure dearly. But I had the library, so I think decisions around libraries have to be really carefully thought through, especially in cities like Bradford, where so many, with the poverty rates that we have, and where people don't have that kind of access.
Yeah, it has been a problem because there have been massive closures of the libraries locally, haven't they? And I mean, I'm assuming that the Literature Festival may also, are you involved in sort of campaigning for better access to, libraries, free reading?
Well, the work that the festival does is all about raising awareness of the importance of literacy, of education. It's a real core part of our programme. About 70% of the programming that we do is actually for children and young people, and the vast majority of that is completely free. I believe when it comes to books, everybody should have access. So, we work closely with the libraries. We do quite a lot of work with other initiatives that are running in Bradford, like the Imaginarium project. We work with publishers to put free books in the hands of children who may not otherwise be able to access them. And to me, it is vitally important. And I think these are the things that probably can seem quite small, I think, especially when you have access yourself, but are actually, as I said, vitally important in ensuring that social mobility, ensuring that children are actually engaged. And of course, we have local scenarios that are dictated by national policies. So it's a case of having that joined up thinking right across the country.
And I mean, I suppose one of the positives out of the negative situation that we find ourselves due to the pandemic, that reading has actually increased, and traditional booksellers have actually done quite well during lockdown because more and more people have discovered the pleasures of reading. Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's been one of the things that has been really heartening to see book sales being one of the areas that has actually grown. I know publishers have been doing really, really well out of it. A lot of booksellers have done really well out of it. I think reading is one of those simple pleasures in life, and it's something that you can pick up a book just anywhere. And I think in recent years, probably because we are surrounded by so much media of all shapes and varieties, that I think those traditional arts, such as book reading, can get lost. But I think, yes, the pandemic has really helped people to rediscover books and just how good they are actually from a point of view of your own sort of mental health and well-being.
But the other thing that I find quite interesting is people have gone back to the physicality of the book, which is quite interesting because the Kindle was seen as being the thing, or you can read everything online. But I don't know what you think about. I mean, I think that probably the lockdown, people have got absolutely fed up of doing Zoom meetings and Facebook and all that, and thinking there's something nice to take a physical object and take it away into a quiet corner where you have ownership, not just of the words, but you have ownership of that artifact. I wonder if you had any sort of thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I love books, and I love the actual physical object. I think, books can be complete artifacts and, real objects of beauty. I mean, the Kindle has its place, and I think it's great if you're going on holiday, and especially if you've taken some books and you've finished them, but I don't think the physical book can ever be replaced by a Kindle. I remember having a conversation with my daughter probably about 10 years ago when she'd been given a Kindle, and I said to her, the thing is, darling, you can't actually smell the Kindle. And I think that whole thing of holding a book, the texture of the pages and actually the smell of the paper, I think that is an experience that can just transport you in a way that a Kindle never can.
And the other thing that I've quite enjoyed as well is because we have these social distances now, you can't have, close interaction with your friends and family. I've quite liked it when they've given me a book that they've read, because then there is an emotional connection with them, and the fact that they've seen something in a book that they think I might see something in a book.
Absolutely. I think, I have certain books that I have given out umpteen copies of because I have loved them so much and I've taken so much from them. And it is that thing that you want to share, that experience when something has really touched you. You want to pass that on. So I completely agree with you. I think there is something really special about receiving a book and also just being given a book as a kind of, you must read this, I read this and I thought it was amazing and you must read it as well. Because it shows that person's thinking about you as well. They want you to have that experience, but also you're in their thoughts.
So could I ask you, which books have you given out on a regular basis?
Oh, quite a few. I think the ones that I've probably given out the most are, there's a bit of a list, but The Prophet by Khalil Gibran is a book that I came across at university, absolutely loved, has stayed with me all the way through, and I have given lots of copies of that to people. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, again, one of those books that you can read and reread and take something away from each time. And then I have certain things that I love, like Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. Lots of people have received that. The Master and Margarita by Bulgakov. Stardust by Neil Gaiman, which captured me when I first saw it because it said it was a fairy tale for grown-ups, and I thought, that sounds like my kind of book. V for Vendetta by Alan Moore, Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. There is quite a long list, and I'm a great fan of poetry. So lots of my friends have been the recipient of the Conference of the Birds by Friedrich Athar, which is one of my favourite poems.
Because one of the questions I was going to ask you, do you have a favourite book? Which I think is almost an impossible question to answer. So I'm going to narrow it down a bit and say, have you had a book that's been extra special to you during this period of the lockdown?
Yeah, it is such a difficult question, isn't it? I have certain books that I return to over and over again, and probably the author that I didn't mention when I was saying about all the books that I give out, Jeanette Winterson. Her books are books that I just turn to, and I have done for years. I think her writing is so beautiful. The prose is so poetic, and there's a vitality and a passion for life in those books. I think when I'm sort of slightly despairing of life sometimes, or things have happened which might have made me unhappy, I return to those books because they just make me believe in life again.
And also then, would that lead you to think of maybe a film that you've enjoyed, particularly in this last year?
Yes, although I think with books and films, there are certain books and certain films which impact on your life, and you have this trajectory. I think I would be hard pressed to name a single film. I think there are films that I have watched which have had an impact and have stayed with me. There's a film, an Iranian film called The Hidden Half, which when I watched it, I thought it was one of the most beautiful things I had ever seen. An Audrey Tautou film, He Loves Me Not. An old black and white Bollywood called Byar Sahib by Guru Dutt, which again is really beautiful, really lyrical, and one that I turn to over and over. So there's quite a long list of films. I'd be hard pressed to narrow it down to a single one.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting one, that, isn't it? When you have books and films, is often, I don't know about you, but sometimes I have been so disappointed with the film because it's not how I imagined it. And then sometimes, perversely, I've had it the other way around, where I've watched a film. I thought, all right, I'll read the book. And I've read the book and gone, ooh, have I missed something? So it's a very interesting relationship, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's quite difficult to go from a film to the book. I always prefer to do it the other way around. But then absolutely, you have that thing where you can be really disappointed. And I tend to get really annoyed when I watch a film and they've changed some fundamental part of the book, which I thought was really brilliant. Also because I think, don't try to improve on it. I had that with The Lord of the Rings. I love The Lord of the Rings. And again, a book that I have read over and over and over again. And I remember watching the first film in the trilogy and being absolutely delighted. And I watched the second one and I was so annoyed that I couldn't bring myself to watch the third one because they had changed little things. And I was like, you can't improve upon this. You should not be trying to change this.
I mean, the one that really irritates me is particularly the Hollywood thing that they do, is where they don't like a sad ending.
Oh, yes.
So they change it and you go, hang on a minute, that's just made nonsense of it, hasn't it? But, yeah. But the other thing is music. What music have you particularly taken enjoyment with during the lockdown period?
Well, I probably have quite eclectic tastes in that I tend to sort of weir between Western and Asian music. In terms of lockdown, I'm a great fan of the Qawwali genre and ghazals, so I've listened to a lot of those. I've gone back to a lot of the things that I was listening to when I was at university and school, so a fair bit of house music and R&B. I think for me, for solace, there's probably two that I really turn to. One is, which are absolutely not R&B and house, but Amazing Grace is, I think is really beautiful and really speaks to me personally. It has done for quite a long time, and actually in this particular time, I found listening to that to be, I've enjoyed it and I found it helpful. And then the Qawwalis of Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, which are sort of quite spiritual and Sufistic. I've enjoyed listening to those.
Excellent. And it is actually my great pleasure to inform you that the University of Bradford have awarded you an Honorary Doctor because of your contribution to literature and the arts in Bradford.
Thank you. It is such an honour, and I have to say I am so touched by this. The festival is, I've always talked about it as my passion project, and it's something that I deeply believe in, and actually, and it is very much about Bradford. So to have this, to have such an honour from the University of Bradford, who have been such an integral part of the growth of the festival, and I believed in it from the start, is really, really special.